So here's the situation. The Epstein Files aren't just one investigation or one set of names. They're a paper trail showing how power moves, how access is protected, and how uncomfortable information gets managed rather than confronted. I'll start with what these files actually are, just to remove any confusion. And don't think you know all the basics, even if you've done some research. The Epstein Files are more than 3 million pages of material released by the United States Department of Justice. They include emails, calendars, flight logs, photographs, videos, depositions, internal memos, and records collected across multiple investigations over several decades. This material wasn't created all at once. It was gathered by different agencies at different times for different reasons and then stored inside federal systems. What we're looking at isn't a single case file. It's an archive. Now here's where it gets interesting. These files were released in one massive dump after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That law forced the Department of Justice to disclose what it had. Not selectively, not gradually, all at once. Officially, this was transparency. Practically, it meant releasing so much information that no single person could realistically digest it. That matters. Volume can hide things just as effectively as secrecy. Sometimes better. Not everything was released. Roughly 200,000 pages were withheld or redacted. Names, locations, identifying details. The stated reason was legal privilege and victim protection. The unanswered question is who decided what stayed hidden and what didn't. That decision alone shapes the story more than any single document, and decisions like that are usually made behind closed doors. I've learned to notice that. This leads to a concept critics started using almost immediately. Obfuscation by scale. That's the idea that you technically comply with transparency laws while still making real understanding almost impossible. Millions of pages, inconsistent formats, no narrative order, no roadmap. If you wanted the public to feel informed without actually being informed, this would be the way to do it. I'm not saying that was the intention. I'm saying the outcome looks familiar. Then there was the redaction failure. Journalists and survivor advocates noticed something that should never happen. Some files contained unredacted names and personal details of Epstein's victims, phone numbers, identifying information. At least 31 survivors were exposed. Some reported harassment shortly after. The Department of Justice pulled thousands of documents offline to fix the mistake, but the damage was already done. If the goal was transparency, this part landed squarely on the wrong people. Now we get to what the files actually confirm. They document a consistent pattern of abuse. Epstein recruited underage girls, paid them cash, assaulted them, and then pressured some to recruit other girls. This isn't speculation. It's supported by victim testimony, journals, witness lists, and corroborating records. Some victims were as young as 14. Some described being abused hundreds of times. This wasn't chaotic behavior. It was systematic. Which brings us to something that should have stopped all this earlier. 2007, federal prosecutors drafted an indictment. Not a small one. It accused Epstein and unnamed co-conspirators of trafficking 19 underage girls over several years. That case was never filed. Instead, Epstein received a non-prosecution agreement. Federal charges were dropped. He served 13 months in state custody, much of it on work release. After that, he went back to living like a billionaire. The files don't explain why prosecutors backed off. They only confirmed that they did. After his conviction, Epstein didn't disappear. The file showed he continued corresponding, hosting, and networking with powerful figures across politics, finance, technology, and royalty. This is important. By that point, he was a convicted sex offender. Anyone dealing with him knew that. Continued contact doesn't automatically prove crimes, but it does raise a quieter question. What made people so comfortable staying close? One thing the files are very clear about is this. Being named in the files does not mean guilt. Many names appear because of scheduling records, emails, third-party claims, or incidental contact. The Department of Justice repeats this frequently, and they're right to do so. The files show proximity, not verdicts, but proximity is still data, especially when it repeats. And Epstein understood proximity very well. Emails and calendars show him acting as a connector. He arranged introductions, set up dinners, positioned himself as someone who could open doors. That role gave him value. And when someone appears useful to powerful people, scrutiny has a way of softening. I've seen that before. Different case, same pattern. So here's what we know about the people mentioned in the files. And I'll be careful here because names don't mean guilt, but patterns still deserve attention. Jeffrey Epstein sits at the center of everything. The files show his emails, photographs, properties, planes, surveillance systems, and communications stretching across decades. This isn't a rumor archive. It's an administrative record of how deeply embedded he was in elite spaces. The documents show access, not verdicts. But access at this level doesn't happen by accident. Ghislaine Maxwell appears constantly. She's not peripheral. She's present in photographs, emails, and victim journals, and she's now convicted for trafficking minors to Epstein. In the files, she's described arranging travel, managing girls, and maintaining Epstein's social world. This part is settled in court. Everything else branches outward from it. Jean-Luc Brunel is also named repeatedly. A modeling agent accused by multiple women, referenced directly in victim journals, and later found dead before the trial. His presence reinforces a recurring theme in the files: recruitment pipelines that intersected with fashion, travel, and wealth. Then we move into the larger orbit. Elon Musk appears in email correspondence. Epstein invited him to his island, discussed helicopter transport, and suggested social visits connected to business figures. Musk has denied visiting the island. The files show communication and invitations, nothing more. Still, Epstein clearly believed he could approach the most powerful people on the planet without hesitation. Bill Clinton is mentioned through photographs, travel references, and unverified allegations recorded by the FBI. Clinton denies wrongdoing and denies visiting the island. Donald Trump is named as well, largely through overlapping social circles and later through unverified allegations contained in an FBI interview. The FBI itself notes inconsistencies and a lack of corroborating evidence. No charges, no follow-up. This is one of several examples where the files document a claim, not a finding. Now Bill Gates. His name appears in emails and photographs and in draft messages written by Epstein himself. Gates has stated meeting Epstein was a mistake and denies any criminal behavior. One detail in the file stands out. Epstein's own draft communications include a claim that Gates contacted him requesting antibiotics after contracting a sexually transmitted disease. This claim originates solely from Epstein-authored material. It is not supported by victim testimony, medical records, or charges, and Gates denies wrongdoing. Leon Black appears in correspondence tied to high-level networking. He later resigned from major positions after revelations that he paid Epstein large sums for financial services. Again, proximity and transactions are documented. Several intellectual and political figures also appear. Ehud Barak, Larry Summers, Noam Chomsky, Marvin Minsky, illustrating Epstein's reach into academia, economics, and government. Some of the most extreme material appears in FBI interview records. One interview documents allegations of ritualistic abuse, multiple political figures, and violent acts. The FBI assessment is clear. The interviewee was emotionally unstable, unable to provide evidence, and the claims were not pursued. What this section of the files ultimately shows is not a clean list of villains. It shows something more uncomfortable. Epstein operated in plain sight, among people powerful enough that contact alone carried weight. So, here's what we know about the high-profile reactions to the Epstein Files release, and this is where the story starts talking back. Almost immediately, political figures went on the defensive. Donald Trump reacted publicly after references to Epstein resurfaced in mainstream culture, threatening legal action over jokes and commentary he said were misleading. His position was simple: distance, denial, and pushback. The reaction itself mattered less than the speed of it. People who feel untouched don't usually rush to the microphone. Bill Gates took a different route. He issued a public statement saying he regretted his association with Epstein and called it a mistake. No hedging, no long explanation. just regret. Gates did not comment on specific claims circulating in the documents, but his response was widely read as an attempt to close the door rather than debate what was inside the room. And then there's the online sphere. Nicki Minaj, without naming the files directly, posted cryptic statements about Hollywood elites and hidden behavior. No documents cited, no specifics named, but millions of people knew exactly what she was gesturing toward. That's how these stories travel now. What sticks with me isn't what was revealed. It's how familiar the structure feels. Closed circles, controlled narratives, a public surface designed to feel safe, while the real machinery stays hidden underneath. Once you recognize that setup, you start spotting it in unexpected places. Not courtrooms or boardrooms, but spaces built on illusion, spectacle, and comfort. Places like Disneyland.